with Richie Allen.
It's an absolute pleasure, as always, to welcome David Icke to this programme. David Icke, you're welcome back. How are you?
Thank you, Richie. I'm okay, mate. You?
I'm great. You sound great, and thanks for coming on. I know it's a crazy time for you, and you get all sorts of requests, particularly when things happen like today. I imagine your inbox is bursting full, your email and all of that. Now, look, we've got hundreds and absolutely literally hundreds of well-wishers wishing you well and making comments and all of that. We'll get to some of those within the next 50 minutes, the next hour and 50 minutes or thereabouts. But I suppose there's no place we can start other than with Leon Brittan. We learned today, you, I and everybody else, that he passed away late last night at his home. And I suppose victims of child abuse who are hoping that eventually this man might be interviewed under oath, I suppose will be pretty disappointed today.
Well, you know, in the 25 years that I've been on this road, and an aspect of it, of course, has been uncovering the unbelievable global network of paedophilia and Satanism, which we talked about at length the last time I was on.
We did.
And, you know, I named people like the Prime Minister Ted Heath, the Conservative Prime Minister, years before he died, Lord McAlpine, all these people. And another name that has come up many, many times over the years from people who've talked to me about abuse is Leon Brittan. And, you know, I think even in some areas of the mainstream, certainly in recent years, it's been pretty much an open secret. I mean, when you see the questions of why Leon Brittan, when he was Home Secretary in the paedophile-infested Thatcher government of the 1980s, why as Home Secretary he was handed a dossier of elite political VIP paedophiles by Geoffrey Dickens, a Conservative MP, and it went missing. Now, of course, at the same time that Leon Brittan was Home Secretary, we had an Attorney General called Sir Michael Havers, who has been named by victims as a paedophile who was seen at paedophile parties, not least in places like Dolphin Square, this place where so many MPs live near Parliament. And Havers was exposed for covering up a paedophile called Sir Peter Hayman, who was a well-known diplomat, who was named by Dickens in the House of Commons as a paedophile. And so it's like, what's happening with Leon Brittan? What happened to the Dickens dossier? Why did it go missing? Why did Leon Brittan not act against the infamous paedophile information exchange, or PI, that was highlighted by Dickens and others at that time? Well, it's a simple answer. Leon Brittan was one of them. That's why they were covering it up. And, you know, he's died now. They say he died of cancer. He may well have done. I'm not saying he didn't. But after a quarter of a century of this stuff, golden rule number one: never believe a thing the establishment tells you unless you can see through the evidence and background that it's true. But let's just say that at the very least, Leon Brittan has left us at a very opportune time for the establishment, because obviously in this ludicrously delayed and manipulated so-called government inquiry into the events of that period and what happened to the Dickens dossier, Leon Brittan, alive, was in effect the key witness. What happened? What's going on? And so that, at the very least, it's an opportune time for anyone that wants to cover up what actually happened. But this is another question, Rich, that I would ask. Let's say, and I'm not saying it's not true, I don't know, but let's say he has died of cancer. I mean, people like Theresa May and these other people are involved in setting up this inquiry, who knew Leon Brittan well and will have been well aware of what was going on. They would have known that he had cancer, and they would have known some kind of prognosis for it. But this has not been mentioned.
Well said, David, because they would have been rushing to get this guy on the record in a fair and just world, of course.
Yes,
which is what you're getting at, yeah.
And the point is that against that, they must have had this knowledge of what he had and what the prognosis was, if we take the official story to be true. And at the same time, against that, we've had this extraordinary delay to get the inquiry to a point where he would appear, with this ludicrous nonsense of appointing two heads of this inquiry, Baroness Butler-Sloss. First of all, the brother, or the sister rather, her brother was Sir Michael Havers, the guy in the centre of it. I mean, you either are appointing someone like that in an attempt to cover up, or maybe with the hindsight of what we know now, creating a situation where there was bound to be a delay because of the challenge to it. I mean, who knows which one it was? Then you got Fiona Woolf, who was the Lord Mayor of London, who was put forth to replace Butler-Sloss. And she lived in the same street as Leon Brittan. She was a friend of his wife and him. I mean, that was another kind of, especially in the wake of the controversy over Butler-Sloss, clearly they would have known that would create also another great furore, given the connections between Fiona Woolf and Leon Brittan and his wife, and thus we had another delay. Now, we have to put these kind of possibilities in the pot in the light of what's now happened, because what has clearly gone on and cannot be denied is that the key witness is no longer with us in terms of this inquiry, and they would have known, if the official story of his illness is true, they would have known that the time was getting very short, that he would be around. So wherever you look, Richie, wherever you look in this whole elite paedophile cesspit, you see lies, deceit, and cover-up wherever you look. We've just had out this week this revelation that a 34-year-old document relating to this whole same Thatcher administration of what is called unnatural sexual practices by the VIP elite, shall we say, and on this document it talked about a threat to national security. And this has just come to light, and it's now known it was handed to Margaret Thatcher in the middle of all this, and it went nowhere. It got shelved. And wherever you look, you look at the relationship between Margaret Thatcher and Jimmy Savile. You look at the known paedophiles in the Thatcher government and her inner circle, not least her close aide, Peter Morrison, but others too. And you're looking at an elephant in the bloody living room. The Thatcher government, it's not just the Thatcher government, it's all governments and the political establishment in general and the royal establishment. But you're looking at this Thatcher government in particular, and it was awash with paedophilia. And it was covered up. The security services had to know what was going on. They had to know the nature of Jimmy Savile when he was getting so close into the inner circle of the royal family. And how interesting with this situation with Prince Andrew and Virginia Roberts and this Jeffrey Epstein. I had to smile when I read an article in the Daily Mail recently. It was talking about Epstein, and it said, although it is so difficult and so rare to be invited into the inner circle of the royal family, Epstein was invited to the palaces for like personal gatherings with the Queen and the royal family. Well, it may be rare, but Jeffrey Epstein a of course friend of Prince Andrew and a convicted paedophile, and Jimmy Savile, a record-breaking paedophile, both made it. And it's going to, we're now entering a period, not least with this subject alone, Richie, when people have got to start, and to be fair, more and more are. They've got to start opening their minds to the illusion that we're sold from cradle to grave, and understand that not just this country, but the direction of the world in general is dictated by sheer, undiluted evil. And we are just seeing the boil just starting to burst and some of the pus emerging, but it's a fraction of what's actually behind world events and the direction this world has been going in for such a long time. And this is one subject area because it's so emotional, because it relates to children and innocence and imposing power over the vulnerable. That this has the potential, horrific as it is, to actually start to prod people awake, to start to face what we're dealing with, so we can actually deal with it.
I've got so many messages coming in, so we're going to pause for about 30 seconds while I read out some of these. Some of these are questions, but don't worry about it because you've already answered some of this. It wouldn't surprise me, says one person on Twitter, if the control system now starts to admit that he was guilty because another one has escaped justice. Tony says Ken Clark was on Channel 4 News and quoted as saying, yes, Leon Brittan was an usher at my wedding. You couldn't make this up, says one of our listeners. Simon has been on to say, ask David if he feels the system is in overdrive because full exposure is upon it. We'll get to that in a second. There's just so many of them. I've got some of them coming on Skype, so let me get to a few more of them now. Luke is on to say, it's funny how we know they were both travelling to the same destination, same time, coincidence, holidays. This is about something to do with Cliff Richard and Barbados. I don't think mentioning Cliff Richard now at this point in time. Gary's on to say, look to Scotland, Holly, Greg, Robert Green. Scotland is a major channel for these scum. Why did Sir Jimmy choose Glenn Coe? And Bertha has been on Skype, and Bertha's been asking, are we better served, much as it might not be, it might be difficult for us to stomach, to get involved with our local MPs, to get informed on what has been going on and is going on in Westminster, what they do in Westminster, and what we can do at local level to influence our local MPs to work for our good. I personally believe that our apathy has allowed power to slip away and into the hands of those who serve these awful corporations and not our nation, and end up doing these awful things, says Bertha. And finally then, before we get back to it, David, Joanna's been on to say, funny to listen to all the politicians leaping to the defence of Leon Brittan. Watch them backtrack once the truth starts to come out. Now, we kind of know the truth, but I think she's alluding to the fact when these people are faced with the truth, those who are praising him today won't be long about jumping back and saying, oh yeah, of course, yeah, he was an absolute dirtbag.
Well, there are a number of things that could happen now. First of all, in terms of naming him and revealing things about him, the shackles are off in terms of the legal system. And that will chill a lot of people out who will know things about Leon Brittan. And I'll be very interested to see how this plays out in the days, weeks, and months ahead. But in terms of, the way you follow the story, they're obviously less concerned about people being named who have gone and can't be questioned. And if you like, a domino's gone, because if someone's alive, then that domino can lead to other dominoes. When they're dead, it's like, oh, well, it's gone now, and it's all history. But it isn't. It's still going on. What we're looking at with this Thatcher administration is like a point where the hidden breaks the surface. But below the surface, what's coming out about the Thatcher administration is going on everywhere, not just in the Conservative Party either. In terms of Scotland, the person's absolutely right. I've said this in my books over the years. Scotland is a massive centre for all this, not least because a number of key bloodlines in this bloodline network that I've been exposing all this time actually are based in Scotland. And it's not called the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry by accident either. So, yes, Scotland is very, very much involved in this. In terms of MPs, it depends on your MP. I mean, there's this great controversy about whether people should vote or not. And of course, Russell Brand's come out with all this, and I've been saying it for decades that I don't see the point in voting. And when people say, "Well, why is that? Why can't you get involved in the system and have your say?" Well, I would be all for it if having your say made a difference. But when you've got the major political parties, in fact, most of the small ones do, that have any chance of forming a government, standing on the same postage stamp and ultimately answering to the same masters, which is why nothing changes whoever comes into government, then what is the point of giving your support and credibility to a system that is rigged to the point where nothing changes whatever you do? There is another very positive way, I would suggest, of making a statement far more powerful than voting for one of the pairs of feet on the postage stamp, and that's to say, I'm withdrawing my self from this rigged system to expose the fact it's rigged. And someone on the radio the other day said they would vote if there was a place at the bottom of the name saying none of the above.
You're absolutely right.
Now, that would be fine because it allows you to make a statement about the system that you know is rigged. But if we go on voting in elections, believing it's going to make a difference, and then within no time you realize it hasn't. And I mean, look what happens. You get a party in, Party A. Okay, you don't like what they do because of the direction that they've taken the country and its effect on the most of the people in the country. So in most countries, you have a choice in any party forming a government to vote mostly, sometimes three, but mostly for Party A or Party B. So you don't like Party A now because of what they've done. Election comes, got to get them out. Yeah. I'm voting for Party B. Party B is controlled by the same network that controls Party A. So they then go about their business and nothing changes. In fact, as we've seen with Obama and Bush, as a wonderful example, and Cameron and Blair, is the same thing, the same direction moves on. So then you go, well, I don't like Party B, I'm getting them out, I'm going to vote for Party A next time. So it goes on, generation after generation, decade after decade after decade. And at last, now, people in greater and greater numbers are starting to realize that actually it doesn't matter who you vote for because the government, the secret government, always gets in. And, we've got this situation running as well today, which kind of connects into the cover-up of the paedophilia. And that's the cover-up of the stitch-up to take Britain and the United States into the Iraq War. For people around the world, there's been a so-called inquiry running for 6 years now, since 2009, headed by a career diplomat and civil servant called John Chilcot. Now, it's investigating the circumstances leading up to the invasion of Iraq and what happened. Now, when I just say it doesn't matter who you vote for, the government always gets in, I give you Sir Geoffrey Haywood and rest my case. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Chilcot has been trying to get correspondence published between Bush and Blair to see what they were saying to each other and what they were communicating to each other in the run-up to the invasion of Iraq that caused such mayhem, death, destruction, and slaughter in that country, still ongoing because of the mayhem that was created by it. And one of the delays, ludicrous delays in the Chilcot inquiry and its report, which has been announced this week, it won't be before the next general election in May, is the fact that there has been a challenge to what can be published about the communications between Blair and Bush. They want to censor what the public is allowed to hear. And the person who's behind that, publicly exposed in the mainstream, is a man called Sir Jeremy Haywood. Okay, he is cabinet secretary to David Cameron, the current prime minister, and recently became, I understand, head of the Home Civil Service. He is known, his nickname is Sir Cover-Up. And this same Haywood was principal private secretary to Tony Blair when he was prime minister.
He was indeed. He was indeed.
Was a major Blair aide in the very run-up years and months to the invasion of Iraq. Now, this man now, who is not elected, who is a civil servant, has been allowed to dictate what can be seen publicly of the communications between Blair and Bush, so-called publicly accountable politicians. When he was involved with Blair in the run-up to the invasion, he's now cabinet secretary to David Cameron. And so when Cameron, the prime minister, in responding to the fact that this Chilcot report will not report before the next election, says it's extremely frustrating. I mean, the man is such a liar. It's unbelievable. He is the elected prime minister of this country. He should be dictating to Haywood what is allowed and what isn't, or what is challenged and what isn't, not a unelected civil servant. But here we have the situation where this man was a key aide to Blair, Labour Party, and now is cabinet secretary and basically runs the show, according to people on the inside, it seems, under David Cameron, a conservative prime minister. And this is when governments come and go, the system that they work within doesn't come and go. That goes on as always. And so the here today, gone tomorrow politicians, which we elect, have so much less power ongoing in directing events than do the permanent structure within which they come and go. And that's another major reason why so-called democratic elections are just illusions to give the people the idea that they are deciding events and they are deciding the way the country goes. So they'll keep their mouths shut and keep their heads down and won't cause any trouble while the hidden hand goes on doing what it likes, whoever's in power, political power.
And people understand that now more than ever, I think. I've got so many questions and comments. You're going to love this, by the way. This is from Dawn Alexander. Dawn, how are you? Thanks very much for listening to the programme. Richie, tell David this. I've just been watching the One Show on BBC before you came on with David Walliams. He wrote a book for Comic Relief called The Queen's Orangutan. I heard him describe the Queen as iconic, but I could have swore he said archontic. I guess I've been listening to the programme for too long. I love David and delighted that he's on tonight, says Dawn. I love that. That is funny. Karen has been on to say, getting closer to death, I wonder did Brittan develop a conscience and did that maybe hasten his end? That's not a bad question. Getting closer to dying often can bring people to leak the truth. In a way, it's sad his knowledge died with him, but a pleasure to know that he might have died with a fear of repercussions for his actions. Born in hell, says Karen. I can understand people having those sentiments, but I never like to go down that road. I really don't. But I can understand people feeling like that.
Yeah, no, because you know, if we react in a way that that which we are challenging reacts, then we become that which we're challenging, really. And what we're dealing with is a mentality that has no heart, no empathy, no compassion, no ability to empathize with the victims and the suffering that they cause. If we're going to move the world in another direction, then we have to come from a different direction. Otherwise, we're just going to add to what we already have. And it's, I mean, I can honestly say I've been exposing these people for 25 years, but I have no hatred for them at all. I have no hatred for Leon Brittan, any of them. No hatred for Jimmy Savile. I think they're pathetic people, and we should not forget this, that, you know, there is no such thing as death. And when our awareness, our consciousness leaves the body, it doesn't disappear and go into oblivion. It's ongoing.
Yeah, it's ongoing, yeah.
And where the ongoing is dictated by your state of being, which dictates your frequency and state of energetic vibration. And thus, it doesn't end when it ends here. It goes on. And, you know, what Martin Luther King said was absolutely brilliant. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And so there is no avoiding, not punishment, but outcomes beyond this world as well as in it for our actions. And so it's not like anyone's got away with it. It doesn't work like that, because we are infinite and life is ongoing and consequences for actions are ongoing. So I have no hatred for these people at all. I have a fierce determination to expose them, because by exposing them, we have a chance of bringing an end to what their predecessors, and those who are still here doing it, have been doing to children and others for, as long as this human world has been in the distorted state it has.
Joanne says, no point going down the hate direction. I agree with David. That's what they feed off. Go down the love direction, and that will shock him. I remember you talking at length about that at Wembley back in October. Speaking of Wembley, a number of listeners saying they were at Wembley in October and loved it, and it changed their minds, and in some cases the minds of people they brought with them. Not changed their minds as such, but got them to look at things in a different way. Eric is listening in Dublin, absolutely delighted to be hearing David Icke on the show tonight. It was Peaky who said he was at Wembley, and he woke me up about 4 years ago. Thanks, mate, says Peaky. Going down. I want you to do me a favour, David. I want you to say hello to a lovely woman and her boyfriend in Colombia. Isaura and Andrew are listening in Colombia now. I've bought The Perception Deception, have read it, and are big supporters of what you're trying to do. So it's Isaura and Andy in Colombia. So say hello to them.
Okay, hello, Andrew, and Isaura. It's Aura.
There you are. It's perfect. Listening in Colombia. Yeah, she was on with me just before Christmas. I couldn't believe it. Listening in Colombia. Really interested in the information. Young lady.
Great stuff.
Luke says, go on.
This is the whole thing. The thing about things like Wembley and the books and whatever, and the kind of shows that you do, it's what wakes people up is access to information that they've not come across before. Simple as that. You know, the system doesn't suppress the free flow of information for a bit of fun. It does it because it's the only way that it can hold on to its power. The structure of society is such that it firewalls the media, it firewalls science, it firewalls medicine, it firewalls all these sources of information from which people get a fix on life, themselves, world events, whatever it is. And all people like me are doing is trying to make available to people who want to look, information that gives a different way of looking at everything. And the power of it is what wakes people up, because they have access to another angle on everything for often the first time. And this is why information is the way forward. We need to keep putting out other ways of looking at things. And I must say that, when I was observing the response to what happened in Paris recently, what is always more and more encouraging every time these things happen, these events happen, is that more and more people are questioning the official story. And it's so important that we do, because when you research almost any official version of anything, it's either a pack of lies or a pack of half-truths. And so if we accept the official version without question, we are simply allowing the events that the system wants us to believe, or the version that they want us to believe, to become our personal perception. And my last book is not called The Perception Deception by accident. The perception deception is the very foundation of the entire control of humankind, because from perception comes action. From perception comes either action or lack of action, lack of response, lack of challenge to what's going on in the world, because our perception is we're being told the truth.
Richie Allen.